Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Season 2, Episode 9 of Apple TV's Ted Lasso, entitled Beard After Hours. Title is based upon the Scorsese film called After Hours, which, just like this episode, is basically about a bunch of shit happening to a guy on his way home from work. I'm simplifying it a little bit, but yeah, it's pretty much the same concept. This very kind of a metaphysical kind of episode almost. A lot of shit happens in this episode that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Well, I'm not gonna say it doesn't make a lot of sense, but is a little bit it's not in line with how this show traditionally tells its story. Put it like that. After the Christmas episode, someone put in my comments that this was supposed to be a 10 episode order, and apparently Apple decided, like, no, we want another 2. So that kind of like created these bottle episodes, the Christmas episode and this one, that don't really fit in narratively with the show. And I think ultimately that's going to harm the perception of this season, and I don't know why Apple would do something like that. Like, why would you take a situation where, someone comes to you with like, hey, here's 10 fresh episodes of what is probably, I'd say, most likely their most popular show. Here's another 10 episode season. What cause do you have to say, put on another 2? I don't really give a fuck what they're about, where they fit in with the show narratively. Just do another 2 because we just want 12. Okay, so you're willing to sacrifice the quality of the show, show that is probably going to win a lot of Emmys on Sunday. You're going to sacrifice the quality of that to have them shoehorn in some bottle episodes that don't fit in narratively. I found that information to be very interesting, and then I've confirmed it after this episode. I thought, this seemed like a very much a bottle episode too, like the Christmas episode. And sure enough, this was one of the 2 that they were essentially forced to make. Now, from my perspective, it's not a knock against the episodes themselves. It's just something where it's like you have a show where season 1 went a certain way, they planned out season 2 a certain way, and now you shoehorn in these episodes that don't fit in with the narrative, and it just makes it far more jumbled. And you see that, like I saw it in the comments on within this Facebook group that I'm in, the comments on these videos. People are like, this doesn't feel right. It feels very disjointed. It feels kind of weird at times. And that's what you get out of that. And that was an interesting decision to make. And I think the show ultimately is going to suffer because of that to some degree, as in like the reception of the show is going to suffer for some degree. Because, I mean, look at me, right? A Christmas episode, I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, I judged it as a Christmas episode, like, a singular episode of television. But up to that point, I think that was like episode 5, maybe. Up to that point, we had all of season 1 and the first 4 or so episodes of this season that were structured a certain way. So for me, it was in a serialized way, right? Whereas we progressed through the season in a straightforward fashion. And so for me, having watched the show perform in that manner up to that point, to have it skip months up ahead in time to Christmas for some reason and skip over a lot of things that happened at the end of the previous episode that I wanted to see, it made me think that the show just skipped over that, because like I said, it's progressed forward through time up to that point. So, and I didn't know that we were just going to have like randomly inserted bottle episodes. So if I had known that, I might have judged the episode a little bit differently, or judged the show as it pertains to that episode a little bit differently. And that kind of helps here. So, now that I know that, I'm not going to look at this as like, why didn't you show me what happened with blah, 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 like I felt with the Christmas episode. Why are you putting a Christmas episode in August that skips ahead all these months in time? Like, what happened here? Like, so, but I didn't understand that was supposed to be like a bottle episode inserted. So now that I see that here, I could just look at this episode as a standalone episode of television and assume that we will pick up next week with where we left off in episode 8. So, like I said, very strange episode. There's a lot of interesting things to discuss here. I got a list of things that I kind of wanted to talk about, but I'm gonna do this one a little bit differently, because like generally I kind of talk about kind of recap the episode a little bit and give my thoughts about it. Traditionally is the same way as most narratives go, kind of like start to finish. Like, here's what happened here, here's what happened here. This time I want to talk about things from a little bit more of a thematic perspective, because this is such a different episode. The actual events of the episode, saying this happened and this happened and this happened, aren't really that important, because there's a lot of things that happen throughout this episode that don't make sense within this world. And those things are done for a reason, and they're trying to tell a point. So I kind of want to discuss some of those things. So this episode is really just about kind of like a journey through self for Beard, essentially. Like, Beard struggles over Jane. We know we know Jane is not right for Beard. The coaches know Jane's not right for him. Higgins knows and told him. And Beard knows that she's not right for him. And he says in this episode that, life is more interesting with her. And I think that's emblematic of the problems that Beard suffers, which are self-doubt, self-worth, his value, loneliness. I think these are things that Beard struggles with. And he kind of looks to Jane to kind of like curb that a little bit. And I think that he needs to find other avenues to for kinship, or for validation. I think would be the best. Yeah, validation is the best way to put it. He needs to find other avenues for that. He should probably sit down and have a conversation with Sharon, and I think that will probably happen at some point later in the season, where he'll have to sit down and talk to her. But so there's two main things that jump out for me with this episode. One of them's kind of big, one of them's kind of small. Well, as they happen in the show, one is kind of big and one is kind of small, but thematically they're both fairly important. But the big thing is, like I said, Beard's relationship with Jane. He doesn't see himself as worthy of her, and I think that, not worthy of her, but I feel like he doesn't see himself as worthy of much of anything. But he does. We get his almost like his internal monologue through those announcers that randomly pop up throughout the episode. They talk about how he felt like, they say Coach Beard knows way more than Ted and the other coaches, but he let the other coaches make the wrong decision. Like, he doesn't think, like, we know that's, to me, that reads as Beard feels like he doesn't have enough of a place within the coaching staff. He doesn't do enough. He knows more. He should contribute more. And we know that. We've seen it from day one. When Ted first arrived there, we've seen it. Who has it been every time Ted's like, what does that mean? What is that? It's always been Beard that's explained it. But what did I say after the, I can't remember which episode it was, but it was the one where they did a great job of comparing how Roy is good with the players and Nate is good with the strategy. Who was left out of that equation? Coach Beard, the guy who's been around the whole time, who has been kind of holding Ted's hand through this. So we know that he has that internal beef with himself, knowing that I know this shit, and I've allowed this guy from to come in from this this college team and come in and be the head coach here and kind of like almost talk over me, and not talk over him literally, but he's the head coach, he's the one that's in charge. And then you bring in Roy, you bring in Nate, and Coach Beard falls back when he's the guy, right? So we see that he has a lot of self-doubt there. Let's see, what else did I have? I was saying that he needs to understand that there are things around him that he should appreciate a little bit more, that will give him that validation and that worth, and that will help him feel more important. Like, he's got the coaches, he's got the team, he's got the guys from the pub. Like, he has all kinds of people who love and support him. And he doesn't need to seek out a toxic relationship like the one with Jane. He feels great when he's with Jane, and we see that at the end of the episode. But we also know that he feels the lowest of lows as it pertains to Jane as well. So I think they did a really good job of, finding a way to, in a non-corny fashion, have Beard kind of narrate his own internal monologue. Like, we hear about Beard's issues not through him, but through his, hallucination of these announcers who narrate, how he hates himself and all this kind of stuff while he's getting his ass kicked. And then the second thing was, he drops his keys multiple times here. And the first time, I noticed it, but I didn't write it down as something that was important. I'm like, he fucking dropped his keys. Big deal. When he dropped them the second time, and when he dropped them the third time, I'm like, okay, this is saying something. And then at the end of the episode, he tries to get into his house, and then we saw at the beginning of the episode that he struggles to get in the house with the key. It's like jiggle it and shit, and it's tough to get in. And then this time it breaks off and he can't get in. And I'm trying to think like, okay, this is a very episode that's heavy on symbolism. What does it mean that he keeps dropping his keys? And the only thing I could arrive at is that he doesn't want to go home internally, subconsciously. He doesn't want to go home. That he can't get in the house with the key. He constantly is at a threat of losing it. People just have to keep giving it back to him. So it's almost like he's subconsciously trying to get rid of his key. Then he gets home and the key breaks altogether, and now he literally can't get in. And why wouldn't he want to go home? Because that's probably where he's alone. And he's reminded that, at least to him, that he doesn't have anyone else to be with. And I think he needs to, like I said, talk to Sharon and kind of like come to grips with the fact, not come to grips, but come to accept the fact that it's not Jane that makes him worthwhile. He needs to know what makes himself worthwhile. He needs to accept that on his own. And then he needs to accept that there are other people who truly care about him, who don't want to hurt. Not I'll say want to hurt him, because Jane doesn't want to hurt him, but who don't hurt him regularly like Jane does. So from his perspective, he's thinking like, I go home, I'm home alone, there's no one else here. He's probably wallowing in self-doubt, self-hatred. And then when things are going bad with Jane, it's probably even worse. So he probably almost looks at that as like a symbol of like his emptiness, because the house is empty. It's just him. And he needs to understand that there are other things in his life that can give him fulfillment. He just needs to stop tying all of his worth to Jane. And I think that's my perception, because it's one of those things where you can only really guess, right? I think that's what the whole situation with him constantly dropping the keys. I don't want to say drop. He was dropping them, but a subconscious kind of like trying to get rid of the keys to his house and then eventually not being able to get in all together. I think that's what that means, but hey, feel free to drop your interpretations in the comments as well. So a couple of things I want to talk about. I really liked the the scene in the pub where he's hanging out with the guys, and they ask him the 3 questions, and he gives the answers. 1 day in Vegas is great, 2 is good, 3 is too many, and he talks about what is Ted's just a man, yada yada yada. And then they decide to go to this club. What was it called? Something in Honey. I can't remember. They decided to go to this club, and they said the club wouldn't even let Sharon in. And then Paul goes, would you believe they'd do something like that or something like that? I thought that was a really, really good line. And I feel like he's good on the show. He's my favorite of the 3, I think. But all 3 of those guys are awesome. I thought that was a great scene. I also thought it was interesting that they put this woman in red. So Beard sees this woman at the bar. He kind of chases after her. Ends up in this weird room with televisions, which is another thing that I don't really get what that was about. I'm trying to figure out like a lot of the meaning behind the things that don't make sense, and I can't wrap my head around the room with the TVs in it. But it could just be, maybe there were no TVs in there at all, or maybe it was just like it's just that kind of place where like they just have like weird artwork or weird things in different rooms that are just kind of meant to be kind of trippy. And because clearly he imagined the announcers and the game and all that kind of stuff. But it could have just been a room where they just have like, TVs with weird shit, because their whole place is designed with weird shit. But, he chases the woman in the red dress there. And I found it interesting that they put her in a red dress. Kind of cliche, but, red dresses, women in red dresses usually represent like temptation. And, he goes back with this woman. He says that he loves Jane, but I feel like he would have had sex with that woman if given the opportunity. So, he he follows this woman to what I thought was the bathroom. I'm like, oh, he about to follow her to the bathroom? Like, Coach Beard's ready to go. But it just ended up being the TV room. But, he gets kicked out. She's out there. He goes back to her place. Like, all of this to me read like Coach Beard's trying to find someone else, a sexual encounter for the night to kind of get his mind off of Jane. It doesn't work out that way, but interesting choice for the red dress, I think. Let's see. Oh, I like the club scene at the end. Cause like I said a little bit earlier, it kind of showed him just being completely free and released. Like he was just in his happy place, being able to dance freely with Jane and all this kind of stuff. And from my perspective, it's like both good and bad. Like you see him finally releasing. his dancing is just flailing his arms all over the place. He's hula hooping and shit. Like it's very free. And you can tell he's very happy in that moment. But from my perspective, I've seen what Jane has done to him. And it's almost sad to see him be that happy with her, knowing that inevitably something will happen again that will bring him down to the lowest of lows. And I think it's just the cycle that Beard goes through. It's pretty sad. But I did like watching him dance because in that moment it was nice to see. I loved the guys getting to go on the field. I thought that was so cool. Or the pitch, as they say on the show. But the whole thing, like, tell Renee Beard said it was okay, and they like at this back door with like graffiti on it and shit. I'm like, what is going on? And it's just a back door onto the field and onto the pitch, and they get to go out there, and I think they were playing like "We Are the Champions" or something like that. And we all know those guys are super fans, right? We love them. Their commentary in the bar. We love May and all her commentary. May was shitting on him over decisions he made in the game. Like, we love these guys. And for me, as a super fan myself of a team, I know what it's like to be able to get out there on the floor and how great that feels, and to be in the same place that the people that you look up to have been, and that had to have been so cool for them to like have that to themselves, like the whole thing, and they could just like goof off and that was a really great scene. I really love that scene. So overall, I think this episode, now that I see it as a bottle episode and understand and now have the knowledge that they were kind of forced to shoehorn in these extra 2 episodes, it's easier for me to be easy on the episode. Had I not known that, I probably would have been like, okay, man, we pissed away a whole episode on a metaphysical tripping balls kind of experience for Coach Beard that had a whole lot of things that didn't make sense. But like, looking at it from the perspective of, we have to make a singular episode of television. They set it up with the scene at the end of the previous episode of him just like, yeah, I'm just going to go and, hang out on my own. And I thought it was interesting that this episode started with him just going home. I'm thinking like, oh, this is going to turn into a whole thing. And I'm like, oh, he just goes home? Where is this going to go? But, they set it up. So I just kind of looked at it as like, okay, what does this mean? And what am I supposed to take from it? And at the end of the day, it's a look in the Beard psyche. And I didn't have any problem with that. I enjoyed it for what it was. I like looking at shit like that where I'm just kind of like, what does that mean? Like the dropping of the key thing is my favorite thing of the episode, because I once it happened the second time, I'm like, okay, now they're doing this on purpose. Why? And I love to think about the why behind things like that. Why did they have TVs in there? Probably so that Beard could hallucinate some more of his insecurities through them, and why did she have on a red dress? Why did she, here's a question that I would really like answered. Why did she let Beard answer the phone if she knew that was her crazy fucking boyfriend? And FaceTime at that? Like, why did she like, oh yeah, you can answer it, it's fine. What? that I don't understand. Why would somebody do that? But all kinds of really cool shit in this episode. It was a fun episode. Like I said, it's a one-off. I don't really look at it as helping or harming the season in any kind of way. I'm a little bit more understanding knowing that they kind of had to make this just to fill this 12-episode order. I'm more pissed that Apple or whoever demanded an extra 2 episodes that fucked up the narrative for this season and made it feel disjointed, because I know that, but a lot of the people that watch this show aren't going to know that. And they're going to be like, what the fuck with this Christmas episode? What the fuck with this Beard LSD trip episode almost? Like, I don't know. I just think it was a bad decision. But the episode as a whole, I thought it was fun. I enjoyed it for what it was. And I liked at the end him coming in with the coaches, and then Ted wants to watch the game film, and they're like, nah, I don't really want to watch it. He's like, yep, but we got to watch it in 10 times speed with the Benny Hill music playing. And you see somebody like slide into the net, and like their legs go between the netting or some shit. I'm like, yeah, you can't help but laugh at that if it's playing over the Benny Hill music. So fun episode. Episode 10 next week. So we have 10, 11, and 12 left. So these final 3 should be consistent with the narrative. We should find out about what's happening with Rebecca and Sam and Ted and Sharon and Ted's dad and Jamie and his dad and all this kind of stuff. Speaking of which, seeing Jamie's dad in this episode, I don't know about you guys. As soon as I saw Jamie's dad, I went, oh, fuck. like Roy, fuck. That's what I did when I saw it was Jamie's dad. But that's it for this week. Let me know what you thought about this episode in the comments. If it pissed you off, if you thought it was a fun ride, let me know if you have any different interpretations, or if you have any interpretations of something that I didn't talk about. Let me know, and I'll see you guys next week for episode 10. Peace.